Hey guys, how you guys doing today? I'm not too bad, could be better. I'm gonna be heading to work in about 3 hours here. I have a online meeting that I have to get done, which is why I'm not at work now. I start work at 4, so technically I should be at work right now. But anyways, this video on World of Tanks is gonna be a little different. First off, the clip audio is down because, as usual, I'm usually in a party or I'm platooned with one of my friends when I'm playing to get games or just to play to have fun. And most of these games come when I'm having fun, even though most of my high damage games that I like to feature in these type of videos, they normally come when I'm playing solo, because then you can focus more on getting damage. But regardless, all of these clips, all of these replays, I was in a party with one of my friends, or I was platooned with one of my friends, and his voice and my voice were able to be you could hear them in the audio. Anyways, this video is going to be a little different than most video. This is going to be a more of a, hey, let's talk about World of Tanks in 2020 and what the game has really come to and whether or not it's hitting a plateau or if it still has way higher to go. First off, right here on this map, I don't know why, but that area right there is blocked off. I don't know why. I apologize for the burp. Anyways, if we're to get into the video, let's start talking about the game. So, World of Tanks, it's a mash of different type of play styles. You can be aggressive in this game, you can be campy in this game. All of these terms work for this game. However, it seems to be more of an arcadey, RNG based type of game. Especially with the updates that they've been putting in recently, like where they made your aiming circle when you're fully aimed, they've made your aiming circle a lot smaller now. So a lot more of your shots are heading outside of the circle. Specifically, that's from update 4.12, and they did nothing to fix that in 4.13. They did fix a couple of the issues with like large repair kits or something like that, where you'd hit the touchpad to check out the team or something like that, and it would use your repair kit on like your tracks or something like that, and then later on in the battle you'd get like ammo racked and your engine would be destroyed at the same time, so you'd need the repair kit then. But because you didn't have the repair kit, because the game ended up having that bug, you no longer have the repair kit, so now you have to deal with going at 50% of your with playing the rest of the game with 50% of your mobility, as well as having a really shitty reload time because you're ammo racked. But anyways, this game, compared to other games, this game is really one of a kind. Like, yeah, most people would sit there and they'd compare it to like War Thunder or World of Warships, but those games are in a class of their own. Like, you want a realistic game, you want to play tanks, and you want it to be very realistic, go ahead and play War Thunder. That game has all the realism you want. You can play planes, you can play tanks, you have all sorts of I almost said the F word there. I almost dropped an F bomb in my video. I might get demonetized for that. Anyways, or no, I might not get. I'm probably not going to get demonetized, but I almost dropped it, and if I did, I'd get demonetized. But if you're to go play War Thunder, then you're playing a tank with realism. Tanks in this game, like this tank, for example, I'm doing circles right here in the middle of this weather variant. I'm doing circles going 65. If you do 65 and you're going in a circle like that in a tank this small, you're guaranteed to almost flip, if not have the craziest time and have the bumpiest ride of your life inside of that tank. Especially since tanks like this back then do not have that good of cushioning. So this game isn't really based off of realism. It's more based off of what the tanks were capable of, and they just heighten it a little bit. Like, for perfect example, the Chieftain. In real life, that tank is famously known for having a terrible engine, because its engine was supposed to be able to work on anything. It was supposed to be able to work on gas, it was supposed to be able to work on diesel. Anything you could think of, that engine was made to use. In the game, however, if it gets itself into position, it's one of the most OP tier 10 tanks, and it has the speed to get there. Its engine is not unreliable in the game. Like, this game is not based off of realism, and it's really a one-of-a-kind tank, or one-of-a-kind game. Something else to mention is you can really excel in this game if you play to the play style of the tank you're playing. Like if you're playing a Type 5 heavy, let's just say biggest tank in the game, not the heaviest, the mouse takes that, but the biggest tank in the game, the Type 5 heavy. If you're playing the Type 5 heavy and you're using the derp gun, which is more or less accurate than the 140, and you're camping and you're sniping with it, you're going to do much less damage than if you were up at the front, because now you're last on the team and you're a lot less accurate, which means you're going to hit less shots, and you're using high explosive, so you're going to be doing less damage per shot. If you're right up there in the face of the enemy and you're using your armor and you're brawling, yeah, I guess you could say like the Type 5 heavy really, even though it has like insanely thick frontal armor, it's just rendered completely useless to premium rounds, because I can pen that thing with like tier 9 medium tank premium rounds. But that's not the point. The point is frontline in certain tank types, like a heavy tank, and even some tank destroyers and medium tanks. Some of those tanks, some of them have the armor, and some of them do play like heavies. Like, for example, the M48 Patton. That tank actually I think that's the most well-rounded medium in the game, other than the Action X. Is the Patton has very truly hull armor and really thick turret armor, as well as it has the highest DPM on any medium tank, I believe, if I'm not wrong. See, what doesn't make sense about this game is right there, I fell off of a cliff and I damaged my ammo rack somehow, but that's besides the point. The Patton, you can excel. Oh, another yawn. I apologize. But playing the Patton, you can excel a lot if you're playing frontline with the heavies. If you're frontline with an IS-7, if you're frontline with an E100, if you're frontline with a 5A, a Super Conquer, if you're frontline with them and you're hitting and penning every shot and you're using your armor well, you can excel very much at that tank. As well, you can excel playing a medium role. You can scout. It doesn't quite have the speed, but it's fast enough. 45 is not that terrible of a speed, especially if you consider the 430U goes 48. You can excel as well sniping in that tank. The game has very strong, what's the word? You have very strong advantages if you play to the playstyle of your tank. Tank destroyers, if you try playing frontline with a Grill 15, yeah, you can excel at it if you wait for everybody to shoot and you take those 2-3 seconds to aim your shot and bang, you hit them for 750 damage. But now you have to deal with the fact that you only have, I think it's 10 or 11 reverse speed, and now everybody's going to hit you. So you've only really done 750 damage. And if you get 2 or 3 shots, now you've only done 4,000 damage. And that's enough. However, playing your tank to the role that your tank is supposed to play, you can excel very much in. And like I said, there's certain tanks that you can do other tank roles. Like the Jagdpanzer E100, I almost rarely ever see those sniping. They're normally right up there on the front. They want to hit that enemy. They want to hit that guy for the whole 1,050 damage and just boom, and high roll for 1,375. But those are the good things about the game. It has a very wide player base. It's very diverse. You have all sorts of different play styles. And then you get into the stuff that's not so good about the game. One of those being is the disparity between OP tier 10 tanks and UP tier 10 tanks. If you don't know what UP means, I think I'm actually the first one to use it. It's pretty much underpowered tanks. OP, obviously everybody knows what OP is, overpowered. However, the disparity is ridiculous. Like, for example, right here to my left, I see the tier 10 Chinese tank destroyer. That's probably the first battle I've seen that tank in like 9, 10, 11, 12 games. However, a Death Star like this guy right here, I see him in almost every game. Even though he's gotten nerfed, it's still ridiculous how good that tank can be. I'm playing in an IS-7, for example. This tank is the only tank in the game that has this type of armor. Like, I would sit hull down and let Jagdpanzer heat rounds shoot at my turret. I would not bat an eye if he shot a heat round. I bet all my money that it would ricochet off 4 out of 5 shots. And the disparity is ridiculous. Like, I don't remember what update it was on PC, but when they added in the 705A, the 430U, the Object 268 version 4, when they added in all these new tanks to PC, they they're ridiculous on PC. The 430U is not nearly as good as it was when it came out. Neither is the 268 version 4, but they're still ridiculously strong on PC. It doesn't make sense. So when it came over to console, they nerfed the hell out of them. Like the 268 version 4 on PC goes 50. Here, they buffed it up to 40, which I think 40, which now isn't that bad. But when it first came out, it only went 26, and it had a worse reload. It had 650 alpha and a worse reload than the standard 268, which has 200 extra alpha. Like, it makes no sense. Like World of Tanks console, they sit there and they say all the time, they're like, we wanna get away from being compared to PC. But the thing is PC are doing all of these good things, and console are not. They're not learning from it. Like 430U, OP as hell here on console. We need to nerf that. Didn't really need to nerf it, because still, in my opinion, the FV4202 kind of takes the spot for being one of the most OP tier 10 mediums. Even though it's very easily defeated, if you get it in a good position, you're gonna lack a better term, you're gonna rape with that thing. So, like, the best example I can give: Super Conqueror versus E5. This is the greatest example I've given. I was recently kicked out of, or not recently, it's been about 3-4 months, something like that. I was kicked out of my old clan. I was in a clan called Mercs, MERCZ, or M3RCZ. I don't remember exactly what the spelling was, but I was in a clan called Mercs, and I was in it for a very long time. I was in it for a good year, 2 years maybe, and there's this guy in the clan. His name was Rick Jr. And he's very famously known to have... He's very one-sided. He's very biased against anything that World of Tanks console do, or anything that could be good to the game and hinder his experience in a certain tank. And what I'm talking about is... When I was kicked out, it was actually due to the waffle being quote-unquote nerfed in his eyes, not changed. I thought the change that they did to the waffle was amazing. They reduced the reload on the 128. You only have 4 rounds now with 560 alpha. I don't know if they took away any rounds from the 150, but by doing what they did to the 128, it made the 150 useful now. So he obviously disagreed. What he liked is he liked sitting there and clipping out 2 tier 8s in one. And I've been in a game with him, and that's what he did. There was a Jagdpanzer E100 right in front of us. I was platooned with him. I was in I think what was I in? I forgot what I was in. But it was when you could still platoon. It was still when the 2 tiers spread platoon. I think I was in my T10. I think I was grinding out the 277 at the time. But he was in his tier 10 waffle, and there was a Jagdpanzer E100 right out in the open, and then there was 2 tier 8s, half health. He killed the 2 tier 8s and then went on a reload. He liked playing the overpowered tanks and just doing what overpowered tanks do. Now, don't get me wrong. I love playing in the Super Conqueror and doing 9,000 damage like that, just because I'm a Super Conqueror. But the thing is there's an extent to where it's just not fun anymore. Like, there's no challenge. Like, there's really no challenge in the Super... If you get on a ridgeline and you're in your Super Conqueror and there's no arty, good luck to the enemy penning you. They're going to be loading high explosive. They're going to be doing like 30 to 40 damage per shot at your turret because you have the spaced armor on your turret. Good luck to the enemy getting you out of that position. Especially if there's no arty. And, you know, like, it's really separated tier 10s. And my example that I was going to give for the Super Conqueror and the E5 is overpowered, like I said, would be the Super Conqueror getting on a ridge line. If it's a Super Conqueror against an E5, if the Super Conqueror is the one on the ridge and the E5 is sitting out in the open, the E5 loses. Even if the E5 has pretty much the same penetration, almost the same reload, even though he has all that stuff, he's going to lose because the Super Conqueror is on a ridgeline. You can't pen him. Whereas the E5, you have the cupola, and you have the lower plate. And depending on if the E5 is angling, you can actually shoot him straight into the drive wheel, and that's going to go through his tank because you have a little triangle part that comes out of the side of the tank by the drive wheel, like the Super Conqueror has. Except the Super Conqueror's was buffed. And now it's like 303 millimeters, so it was buff. So the Super Conqueror can actually side scrape, whereas the E5 has that weak spot. And the same thing the other way around. If the E5 gets on the ridgeline and the Super Conqueror is out in the open, if the Super Conqueror knows how to hit his shots, the E5 is still going to lose because the E5 has a weak point. The Super Conqueror has no weak spots. If you even just hide the lower plate, they're going to need really high standard pen to go through your upper plate. Because you have no weak spots. So, like, there's really nothing left to say. And to get into where I said they were kind of going up World of Tanks console, is when they released World of Tanks Valor, what they did was every 2 weeks they'd be nerfing or buffing 2 tanks of the player base's choice. And they did that for about 2 months, and they nerfed, I'd say give or take about, nerfed and buffed about 5 tanks, and then it stopped. The Machine was supposedly one of them. The TVP was one of them. The Death Star, the 2684, the 430U, the Chisel, the Ship Barn. All of these tanks were either nerfed or buffed. And then they just stopped. Super Conqueror doesn't get any sort of nerf. 5A doesn't get any sort of nerf. These tanks are the most capable tanks, and they have the most capability in the game. And arguably the 5A and the WZ, like the WZ that's in front of me right now, the Krillin or whatever it's called, are arguably the two most, they have they're the two highest potential tanks in the game. If you want to break 10,000 damage, these are definitely the tanks that you should do it with. But, Wargaming have their reasons. Maybe they didn't feel like doing it anymore, which is arguable. You can make a fair argument with that. They were sick of going through tanks, or they were tired of going through tanks, back to back to back, nerfing or buffing them. You can argue that. You're allowed to argue that. You can make a fair argument about that. But they didn't give us any sort of information about it. They didn't tell us whether or not they were sick of doing it, or Tier 10 was balanced, or they had done enough, or there was a next update coming out. They didn't give us any sort of information like that. They just stopped. It was out of nowhere. And one of the things that they're doing right now, which is pissing off a lot of people, is they're testing all of these different things. They're testing +1, -1. They're testing True Vision. They're testing loaded dice. They're doing all of these tests, but they're not doing anything to back them. Loaded dice, sure. There's not really anything there's not really anything that you can test along with loaded dice that's going to make loaded dice useless, because loaded dice is just whatever your penetration is, that's what you're penning. There's no 25 or +25, -25% RNG rules. That's just, if you have 258 pen, then anything that's 258 pen, you're going to go through. And there's really nothing that you can do to that to make it bad. However, +1, -1, there is definitely things that you can do to that to make that useless. And they have been doing that. They know that the player base, anybody who really breathes, wants +1, -1. It's a step in the right direction. For lack of better terms, it's a step in the right direction. Because you have tier 8 and tier 9 and tier 10 tanks that are crazy overpowered, and playing tier 8 and tier 9 tanks that are stock against these crazy overpowered tanks is brutal. Like, my best example is the IS-4. I didn't have to go through it because I'd already gone up the IS-7 and the 277. But the IS-4, if that is the first tier 10 if that's the first tier 10 Russian tank that you're gonna get, good luck penning tanks with your tier 10 with the stock gun on that thing. Your premium rounds are literally about 40 millimeters less than your standard rounds on your upgraded gun. You get the tier 6 or 7 Russian 122 with 175 pen on its standard rounds and 217 on your premium. What are you to do against a Super Conqueror? What are you to do against an E100? But the thing is that they can't change anything about the IS-4 since it is at tier 10. So there's not really any sort of +1 or -1 or any sort of anything that they can really do that'll balance that out. However, you get the point. Playing stock tanks in tier 10 games is ridiculously hard. Like, you can either do really good and get a bunch of XP, but most of the time you're just going to get steamrolled and you're going to get very little amount of XP. And that's what +1 -1 was good for. Is it allowed tier 8 tanks to not play tier 10 tanks but play tier 9s. You could now fight tanks that are still more capable than you but not crazy overpowered, and you could still do good. And most of the time in +1 -1s, I was getting top tier most of the time. I was grinding out my Tiger 2 during a +1 -1 event, and I was getting top tier. I'd say 75% of the time I'd get top tier. And the reason they don't like +1 -1 is because now there's more incentive to play your tanks through, to grind through your tank, and actually play the game and earn stuff legitimately, rather than just paying for XP. Free XPing your way through the rest of the tank. Because I can tell you, throughout my IS-3, I did not play that thing stock. I had gold, and I bought XP, and I went straight for the top package. +1 -1 allows you not to do that. You can actually play the stock package and go to the next one, the next one, the next one, and actually play the tank and learn the playstyle of the tank and the tank line you're going up, depending on what line it is. Now, what they've been trying to do to kind of be able to say, look, nobody's playing because of +1 -1, is they're doing events at other tiers, specifically tier 10, while they're doing the tests. My best example is not too long ago they had a sorry, I'm yawning again. They had a +1 -1 test for a week, and throughout that week they had double silver and double XP earning at tier 10. Why are you gonna play tier 8 and play for +1 -1 if you can just go play at tier 10 and get 200,000 XP per game, or silver per game? Like, I didn't play +1 -1 then, that's for sure. I played the hell out of my tier 10 tanks, and I grinded over almost 9 million credits. Like, and then they sat there after all that was done. They sat there and said, "Look, nobody played +1 -1 this week. Like, there's no difference." Then, just to rub it in, the following time they had +1 -1 being tested, they had tier 10 ranked battles. Nobody's gonna play +1 -1 if. Nobody's going to play +1 -1 if you can make millions of credits by ranking up in the ranked battles at tier 10. And once again, afterwards, they said, look, nobody played +1 -1. There's no difference. Why should we add it to the game? Give me a second. And then just recently, just 2 weeks ago, I think 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks ago, they had +1, -1. It was fine. This iteration of the test that they did, I actually did not mind. I actually would not mind if it came into the game. However, they do need to lay back on some of the things. But the most recent time they tested +1, -1 was 2 or 3 weeks ago. And they tested it while they were testing their retest for True Vision. This test of True Vision, they buffed like the camo of lights and TDs. Like the Vanguard had 78% base camouflage throughout that test. Now, that True Vision test, I did not mind. It didn't feel crazy OP for campers. In fact, I feel like a lot of the time campers actually got demolished more during that test of +1, or during that test of True Vision, because people had learnt from the last test. However, they were testing +1, -1 as well as True Vision. So when that was done, they did that so that they could say, if more people played, they could say, oh, it's for True Vision. And if less people played, they'd say, oh, it's for +1, -1. They're creating a situation that is going to split their player base like a hot knife through butter. You're going to have the people who want +1, -1, who hate everything that's going on in the game, and they're just going to stop playing the game because they're sick of everything that they wanted or liked in the game has either been taken out, changed, or is not being added. And then you're going to have the ones who are pay to win. They give all their money to wargaming, this, that, everything else. And they're going to be like, yeah, True Vision is awesome. But they're the ones camping. They're going to be like, oh, +1, -1 isn't that great. You know, it doesn't allow people to play the tanks like they actually are. But meanwhile, they're the ones in their Tier 10 Super Conqueror farming IS-3s, KV-4s, and T-32s. They're the ones who are buying all the new premium tanks and just playing those. They're buying all the new reskins, all the premium tanks they want. They're throwing all their money at wargaming. Now, personally, don't take it the wrong way. I have spent good at least $2,000 on this game. I love this game. I hate to see this game go downhill. I love this game. I've spent a lot of money on this game, and I want to keep playing this game. It's an awesome game. It's one of a kind game. But releasing reskins of tanks isn't that good of an idea. Like, I'm getting off topic of what I've been saying, but it's leading into the next topic I wanted to talk about, since we only have about 6 minutes left on the video, is reskins for the Hot Wheels op. For the, I think it was the Valor one. Or no, the WWE. For WWE, I liked the way that they had that set up. You get a tank every 25 tiers after 50. What I didn't like is that if you didn't have the Battle Pass, you got no tanks. Or I don't think you got no tanks. Or you got like a Tier 8 premium or something like that at Tier 10 or at Tier 100 when you got there. But you didn't get all the good stuff. The WWE... What they did with the WWE is they released a bunch of new tanks. They have, what's it called? The Tier 8 Tank Destroyer. I forget what it's called. Here on console, it's called the Bone Shaker. I don't remember what the actual name is. And then you have the E75 TS, I think it's called, at Tier 8. Which that thing, even though it looks ridiculous, I actually really enjoy playing that tank. Those two tanks should have been the Tier 100 reward. But what they did was, I think, at Tier 50 or 75, you got the Trailblazer. And then I forget what the Tier 100 one is, but it's literally a reskin of the Trailblazer. That's lazy. And that's telling people, hey, spend the money, buy the Battle Pass, and this is what you'll get. You'll get 25 levels, you'll get a bunch of new challenges, and you'll get the Bone Shaker. The tank that should have been one of the 2 tier 100 tanks. So myself, I'm not getting the Bone Shaker. I don't want the Bone Shaker. I don't want to spend the money on getting the Bone Shaker if I'm done the battle pass, because then I'll literally be spending $130 for a tank. I don't have any more battle pass to go through. I'm done. So it's lazy and it's greedy of them doing that, because it's a reskin. I forget what the tier 100 light tank is, but it's a reskin of the Trailblazer that you get at level, I think, 50 or 75. It's a reskin. What kind of reward is that? I sold the tier 100 light tank. Tiger Shark. That's it. The Tiger Shark. The Tiger Shark and the Trailblazer are the same exact tank, but they look different. They have a different paint job or camo, whatever the hell you want to consider it. That's all that's different on it. Like, what do you expect me to do if I'm having a shit time playing the Trailblazer and I want to play a light tank and I don't have any premium light tanks, and let's say I want to play the Tiger Shark, I'm going to have just as shit of a time in that thing because there's no camo difference, there's no survivability difference, there's no firepower difference, there's no difference other than the fact that your tank now, instead of looking like a Hot Wheels tank, you now look like a tiger. Or your tank is painted up like a tiger. That's all. That's the only difference, and that boils my blood to see how lazy Wargaming are getting. I personally heavily think that they should be learning from PC. Because I've played PC before. I have an account or two on, I have an account on PC, and I have 2 tier 10s. I have the IS-7, and I think I have the, what's the other one I have? It's a TD, the Badger. I have the IS-7 and I have the Badger. Those are the only 2 tier 10s I have on PC. Mostly because I did actually spend money on PC and got those tanks. I used a bunch of free XP. However, playing PC is like night and day from playing console. Yeah, console plays kind of different because it is a controller and, etc. But they should be learning and adapting from PC. And there's not much to say when it comes to the hope of Wargaming, because they're getting so lazy and they're getting so greedy. Like, nobody wanted the battle pass to have 2 tanks of the same thing, 2 identical tanks, just to be painted different. Like, they excelled, don't get me wrong, they excelled at giving the free-to-play players the T-34-85M, which is arguably one of the most OP tier 6 tanks, but it's lazy once you get to tier 10. Or when it's lazy when you buy the battle pass, you don't get all that much stuff out of it other than boosters, silver, and gold. You don't get any tanks out of it. You get 3 tanks out of it. You get the Trailblazer, the Tiger Shark, you get the Trailblazer. Actually, if you buy the battle pass and let's say free to play wasn't a thing, you would only get the E75 TS, Roger Dodger, and the Trailblazer. Those are the only tanks you would get. But you get 4 tanks out of it because obviously you get the stuff that the free-to-play get too. But that's the point. World of Tanks in 2020 is a shit show. It's not what it used to be. It's nowhere near what it used to be. I don't know what it is about the game, but I think I'm just losing all motivation to play the game. Like, I don't know. But anyways, that's the end of the video. That's my rant. That's a 30-minute video. So that's the end of the video. I'm probably going to be uploading some more this weekend. I'm probably going to be playing a lot this weekend. So I will see you guys when I get another good game that I can upload that wasn't featured in this, because these games were never posted on YouTube, so I'm not going to post these. But I will see you guys when I get another game that I can upload and do a commentary on. Alright? So, ciao.